Well, welcome everybody. This is I guess, inauguration of the Close It Now Book Club. I ran several, about 3 months worth last year, and then life happened and business happened, so I took a break from it. But this is the relaunch of the Close It Now Book Club, which I am super excited about. Things are structured now where this will be ongoing month to month, and so I'm grateful for all of you who have joined us today. And our book this month, of course, is, if you've ever read, let's see, Go for No. The book this month is Go for No, the sequel, which is the continuation, the continued story of the Brattons and what happens in their life, and how going for no just makes such a big difference in life. So we're honored to have our guests today, Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton, the authors of Go for No, When They Say No, and now Go for No, the sequel. And so thank y'all for joining us today.
Absolutely, Sam. It is always great to be with you.
Yes, and an honor to be your first on your pre-launch, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, cool. So I definitely want to, we'll go through some things, but I want to give you guys I have a couple questions. And in fact, I found my new favorite quote in Go for No, the sequel, and I wrote it on my whiteboard right behind me. It is, failure is acceptable, not trying is unforgivable. And
Mm.
absolutely loved that. And it immediately went on my whiteboard, as we all have those moments of, man, the turning, we'll get into the book. There's the turning point when it's like, stop going for the little fishes, go for the big fish. And boy, that just, it really resonated with me. But uh, so love to give you guys a few minutes to give us a little bit of a, what inspired the book. What, of course, Go for No has been a classic for a long time now, and hit so many bestseller lists. Just about all of my peers, I know it's always on their recommended reading list. And so, what inspired the new book, the evolution into the sequel?
Well, you explained this evolution on the call that we
Okay,
were on earlier, so you should do that
I
again.
will explain the evolution. It's a 25-year story, but I can make it much shorter.
All right.
Um, we first wrote the original Go for No book in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
We published it in 2000. And I had always thought someday we'll probably end up doing a sequel, but we were too busy trying to get the book to sell and marketing our workshops and other products. And as we approached the 10-year mark, so it's 2010, and I'm thinking 10 years, this is a perfect time to write a sequel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right at that moment, for whatever reason, the stars aligned, and that was the year that Go for No just took off.
And by the way, before that, for that 10 years leading up to that period, it was a struggle. I mean, it was an uphill battle every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we are a 10-year overnight success story, if you will. And so right when I was getting ready to do the book, I thought we got to write the book. The book took off. We hit number one on a bunch of different lists within Amazon. The phone started ringing, which was nice for a change instead
Mm-hmm.
of always outbound. And we just got too busy. We got too busy to even think about writing the sequel. And then it was like next year. Now it's 11 years, 12 years. So I'm not going to write a 13th year. That's a horrible year for a sequel.
Right.
And then we got to 15, and I just like spaced out. And long story short, kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And then finally, as we approached this 25-year mark from the original publication of the book, we had a very profound. It didn't happen then; it was over time, but we had a really profound new understanding of what the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just tell you that the way that we describe it to people is we call it a sales burger. If you think of all sales training that's out there, the vast majority, the meat of sales training are the steps in the sale,
Sure.
right? It's making initial contact, it's setting up the meeting, it's presenting features and benefits, overcoming objections, the whole process there. And
Mm-hmm.
whether the process is 5 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps, it's all fairly similar. And if it's more steps, it's just nuances of the steps.
Sure. Yeah.
And we looked at the process and we said, why are there so many salespeople that go through sales training and are not successful? So our answer originally was they're just not failing enough.
Mm-hmm.
They are not willing to, to increase their failure rate. They're not hearing no often enough. And so we wrote Go for No originally with the idea that that book would solve the problem for all salespeople. If you were a salesperson and you've been through sales training and you're not hitting your numbers, all you have to do is increase your failure rate. Well, as we did workshops and speeches around the country, people would come up to us and they'd be two very specific groups. The first group was, wow, I love this Go for No concept. All I have to do is increase my failure rate to be more successful. Thank you. And they would go out and do it. The second group, however, would say, I love this Go for No concept. All I have to do is increase my failure rate. This is fantastic. But they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we'd given them the strategy, they still weren't applying the strategy. And I would say if you look at it, it's 80-20. Mm-hmm. It's 80-20. I would say that 20% of the people who went through a Go for No workshop or attended one of our speeches took the ideas and went out and markedly improved their selling, their sales skills. But 80% of the people didn't get off the dime, or if they did, it was for a very short period, then they dropped back. Sure. So the question really became for us, why are the majority of people still not doing it? And the answer came down to a very, very simple thing. It's self-esteem. Mm-hmm. It is a feeling of worthiness. I'm worthy of being successful. I'm worthy of your time. I'm worthy of you saying yes to me. I'm worthy of calling you again and again and again and again, even though there's a part of me that says, oh, I'm bothering them. I'm being a pest. Okay. And we all know that you got to get to about the fourth or fifth no in most cases before people finally listen and they finally say yes to you. Mm-hmm. So most people just could never get to that level. And it's because of their own feelings of self-worth, or more accurately, their
belief in themselves.
Yeah, the lack of belief in themselves and deservingness. Just, I deserve to be successful. And so finally, after 25 years, it became very obvious to us that the sequel had to be about that. Mm-hmm. It had to be about somebody who just didn't feel that they were good enough, and that the strategy itself was not enough. And so our main character in the book, Cassidy Bratton, 22 years old, fresh out of college, who's been thrown into sales, she just doesn't think she can do it. She does not have the confidence. She does not have the self-esteem. She doesn't have, even though she has the concept, her dad wrote the book, for gosh sakes, right? She's been around her father her whole life. She's heard every Go for No story there is, mm-hmm. but she still hasn't been able to raise her self-esteem to the level where she thought that she could do it too. And so that's really what the sequel's about.
I love this so much, and I definitely want to open it up to everybody. But there's a couple of things that really, what I'm hearing you say, and that really stick out to me. One of them is about, I guess, if there was a word that we could make this overarching idea, would be identity. Our belief system about ourselves and the worthiness and every bit of that. And I love that you included it in this book, because doing what I do, I see the same thing. That's my biggest struggle with so many people is like, if I can just help them believe that they can do it, forget the scripting, forget the rest. Let's start there. And so I love that was included in here. And it's so powerful. There's one piece out of the first Go for No that I think is really ties in with this as well, and it's the concept of those limiting beliefs that is part of this, that when in the story, when they're in the gentleman's clothing store, selling from his own pocketbook, right, is originally, who stopped the sale, who said no first? Was it you, or was it the buyer? Was it the client? And so then I love how all of this just weaves together into the new one.
And Sam, I really like your use of the word identity, because the other thing that Cassidy has as an issue that certainly I know you've seen, and probably a lot of people listening to this call see, is that people's identity is, well, I'm not in sales. I'm not a salesperson. I'll go out and service this customer, I'll do whatever, but don't expect me. I'm not one of these sleazy salespeople. So
Hmm.
we want that. That's the other thing that we wanted to tackle, and we kind of picked the the things that we heard the most, which, as Rich described, this issue of people can't go for no, and they love it, but they can't do it. But also some of those other things that we have heard all throughout the years. And sales is sleazy, and I
Hmm.
don't want to sell is definitely another one of them.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, I was noticing going through there. I was like, okay, this is perfect. This is the hit list of,
Yeah.
sales is sleazy, or we're forcing things on them, convincing people to buy things they don't need, and all of these different concepts around why people limit themselves with their belief system, or just or money grows on trees, or all rich people are crooks. And I notice how you specifically hit on all these throughout the book, which was so fantastic. And it carries through. We have these ingrained. Um, Actually, I'd love for y'all to talk about that a little bit more. You highlighted it in the book, and I love the example. I'm not going to give it away. I'll let you guys talk about it because, of course, it's your book. But the ink drop example
Mhm.
in the book, just it gives such a clear visual about how these things affect us. Because in the book, I mean, Cassie, there was no reason that she should have had any of those ideology, because being raised in a very healthy, wholesome household that didn't believe any of that, but it still got into her being. So I'd love for you to expound on that a little bit for us.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, and this was kind of unintentional. And it's funny that you would just bring it up. She was raised in like the most perfect household. Like, come on, your father is this great sales trainer. You should be just this go get 'em salesperson yourself. And it just goes to show you though, like you see this with everyone. It doesn't matter like how quote perfect. You could be raised in terrible circumstances and have different beliefs, or the most perfect circumstances and have different, like, so
Oh,
it's almost like the hangups that we have. um it is what it is, right?
Hmm.
It's who knows the why. And that's what I love that Richard really, when he wrote that section, it was like, well, let's not worry about the why, let's focus on it. Okay, how do we solve it? But you should tell the drops of dye.
Yeah, the drops of dye thing is, I think, very interesting, and I was exposed to it years ago. Somebody who shared it with me, and I'd love to say it was original. It's not. And the idea is, if you take a glass of water and you take, like, Easter egg dye, right?
Hmm.
You take a bottle of blue dye, and you start putting drops in. You put another drop and another drop and another drop, another drop. Eventually, the water is going to start to turn blue. And if you think of that as being, let's say, negative thoughts, that it's kind of the way your brain is. You have these negative thoughts that are put into your mind over time, and you get more and more and more negative. Or in other words, your brain is colored with this idea of negativity. Now, if you took that glass of water, the perfect world to get rid of the negativity is to just dump it out. That would be so fantastic if it were that easy, but it's not, because the mind is not like a glass of water. The mind is very different. Everything that goes into the mind stays in the mind. People
Hmm.
say, like, get rid of that thought. Well, you can't get rid of that thought. That thought is there. I could say to everybody here, um, uh, think of the song "Yesterday" by the Beatles. I can tell you that immediately you start going, yesterday, all
Hmm.
my, right? You start singing it. It's in there. You may not have thought about that song for 5 years or 10 years, but it's in your mind. Anything and everything you've ever been exposed to, positive, negative, and in between, is in your mind. So now the question is, if you've got negative programming about yourself or about sales or any other aspect of life, is how do you get rid of those thoughts? And the answer is you can't. But what you can do is take a bottle of yellow dye, and these colors don't mean anything, I'm just using examples.
Hmm.
And then you start to put a yellow drop in, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And at first, it doesn't look like anything changes because there's so much blue dye in the water the little bit of yellow just isn't going to make a difference. But if you keep putting, and in this case, positive thoughts in, you just keep putting them in and putting them in and putting them in, eventually the water turns green.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, at least you get to a neutralization point. You get to a point where at least you're balanced. Now, if you were to continue to pour yellow water in for years and years and years, the blue would be so minimal, it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't even impact you anymore. And so really it's our responsibility if we want to be successful in anything we do, or if we want to be happy, right, in any area of our life, it's we have to try to screen out the negativity as best as we can. And we have to work really, really, really hard to get the positive information into our minds. And that includes things that people say, oh, affirmations. I've heard of affirmations. I'm a wonderful, powerful person. I'm successful. And they go like, yeah. Well, yeah, you tell yourself that 3 times, it's not going to have any impact.
Mm-hmm.
But you tell yourself that 100 times a day, right? Or even something as simple. And there's a book out there called it's called Love Yourself by Raval Navikant. And he's just like, he said, I was at the lowest point in my life. And I just said, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. I love myself 1,000 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it took a couple of weeks, but then one day I went, wow, I feel better. So we quit too early putting the good stuff into our minds to change the stories we've been telling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell these stories through our entire lives. I'm not good enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough training. I don't have and just fill in the blank with everything. These are all the stories we tell ourselves. And in order to offset that, you need to start telling yourself better stories, and you got to tell them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to tell them for a prolonged period of time. And then eventually it will take hold.
Love this so much. Love this so much. Well, I'd love to open up open up the floor for everyone who's on. What did you get out of the book? What are the concepts? You have questions, of course. We've got the authors here, so now is the opportunity to get to ask questions. Or for everybody that's on to give. What is your insight? What did you pick up from the book? And we could just popcorn style this. Unmute yourself and go ahead and hop in. There's not enough of us that I don't think it'll be an issue.
Oh, no.
And if nobody does, I've got plenty. But
okay.
I definitely want to give everyone an opportunity to speak up.
Fortunately, I didn't get to read it yet. I just jumped in here, Sam, but it's definitely going to put it on my list. I'm on an 8-hour drive, so I might have to. Is it on audio?
It is, yeah.
It is.
Yep, 100%.
Perfect.
Audible.
Yeah, the new one is on Audible, and in fact, I don't know if it's still there, but to Go for No, you're on 8 hours. You've got plenty of time. You could do both of them. Go for No, the original is a 2-hour and 15-minute listen, and then the new one is an hour and 45 minutes. So you absolutely can crush those in the amount of time.
Perfect.
Excellent, man. Anyone else have insights, questions? Mr. Spall, I see you unmuted here.
I am unmuted?
Yeah, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I didn't realize I unmuted, but one of the things that resonated with me, I have not read the new book. I've listened to the original. But one of the things that resonated, and it was mentioned earlier, that having the knowledge and reading something without execution is nothing. You need to execute and put the things into practice to have them deliver some results.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And on that thought, Go for No, if you think about it, is when you put it into practice, is a complete no-lose deal. Because in the Go for No world, if you fail, then you just succeeded at going for no. Because we're okay with no, we're okay with failure. You learn something, right? A lot of people say there's no such thing as failure. It's just called learning. So there's a no-lose deal if you fail. And then, of course, if you don't fail and you get a yes, then you win as well. So there is no such thing as losing when you go for no.
Yeah, and one of the things about Go for No that we refer to it is we call Go for No the great equalizer. And by that we mean people in companies who look at the top salespeople, right? And they've got a closure rate of, I'm making up these numbers here, but their closure rate is 60%. And this other person, their closure rate is 30%. And you think, oh, I'll never be as good as the top people because he closes far more deals than I do. Well, if you up the number of calls and contacts that you make, and if you double those or triple those, you're not only going to equalize it out, you're going to probably start knocking off the top people. Now, I know there's only so many hours in the day and so many hours in the week, but there's a lot of time that gets wasted. I mean, the amount of time that we spend moving paper around and cleaning the desk drawers and going down the hall and having coffee, and there's a lot of dials that can be made in the wasted time, and that's going to turn into obviously presentations or meetings and to close sales. So it really is. You do not have to be the best closer in the world in order to be successful. You need to make the most amount of contacts, and that will be the thing.
Right. And within the world that you guys operate in, it's simply upping your asks. It's simply looking for those go for no moments and executing, as was just pointed out, executing more on them and just pointing out the stuff that people need to think about and that people need to do.
Oh, I love this so much. Larry, did you have something you wanted to add here?
I didn't realize I have a hot mic. I apologize. Good
Oh, no,
stuff.
you're good.
Thank you.
So something I want to circle back to a little bit because I love this concept, and you mentioned it earlier, Richard, was about most people get stopped with one or two no's, but they don't continue on, and how the yeses come after the fourth or fifth or sometimes sixth, or I've been in home in situations where it was 8 or 10 or 12 no's before the yes came. And what I found, at least through my limited experience, is the more no's that I'm able to move past by asking better questions, get clarification, the more no's that I'm able to move past to find, and then when the yes finally comes, those are the happier people, and they're more grateful that we helped them make a better buying decision. I'd love for you to speak to that psychology around that a little bit, because I feel like it's a piece that, especially when I first start training people, the game is initially I'm just like, I just need you to stay in the batter's box longer. Just that's the only thing we're worried about right now. And so I'd love for you to dive into that concept a little bit, because yes, we know we need more no's, but unpack that a little bit for us.
Sure. In the original book, Go for No, we threw out some statistics, and I will tell you that the numbers for every industry are different. Okay, if you're selling magazine subscriptions door to door, the numbers are very different than if you're selling airplane parts to Boeing. I mean, they're just different worlds. But if you look at the average, if you want to say that, the statistics suggest that 44% of people give up after they hear the word no one time. They make the call, they try, they go, nope, not interested, and that's it. And they never approach the person again. 22% more give up after the second no. 14% more give up after the third no. 12% more give up after the fourth no. If you add those numbers all together, it's 92%. 92% of people will hear no 4 times, and they will never contact that person again. But the research project that these numbers came from showed that 60% of all customers said no 5 times before they finally said yes. So you have to ask yourself, and we use the number 5 just as an example point. It's like, well, how do you join the top 8 or 10% of salespeople in the world? Well, the first thing is be in the game. Be in the game after 92% of the people have gone home. They've quit calling. And now you're the only one, you're that 8%, that special group who's there, who's still making contacts. Because sometimes, and I don't want to say that sales should be like this, but my father, who was a great car salesman, #1 salesman in General Motors history, fleet sales.
Mhm.
He had a client that he called on 4 times a year for 7 years. And the customer finally bought his first car in the 7th year. And his reasoning was, he was such a nice guy. Don was such a nice guy. And he kept showing up. I thought, I got to buy something from him. Right. And so he got the one order.
Mhm.
And he said, and it went really well. And so I ordered 5 cars and then 25% of the fleet and 50% of the fleet. And a couple of years later, I was giving the entire business to Don Fenton.
Mhm.
Right? Because he was still in the game. To him, no never meant never.
Mhm.
It always meant not yet. It always meant they're not ready yet, or I haven't explained what we do well enough, or they have some blockage, some legitimate objection or problem, financial or otherwise, that is keeping them. But the great salespeople never think that no means never.
Mhm.
And, I mean, sometimes a no is a no is a no. I mean, I get that, there's some no, and if you really think it is, then great. You need to cut it off and move on. But generally speaking, touching base every 3 months and saying, hey, it's Tom from ABC. I'm just calling to see if anything's changed. Nope, nothing's changed. Okay, I'll call you back in 3 months, see if anything's changed. Click.
Mhm.
That doesn't take so much. And that was a no, right? And you're staying top of mind. You're owning real estate in that person's mind. And we all know, I'll say the last thing here is that generally speaking, people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Mhm.
And I don't think that most people realize that every time you get a no from somebody, they are getting to KNOW, you better. Every time you get a no, it's a touch, right? And every time you make it a touch, a contact, they get to know you better. And then if you start making promises like, I'll call you back 30 days from today, and you call 30 days from today, now they start to trust you,
Mhm.
right? So know, like, and trust is all built over time. It just doesn't happen in the first sale in many cases.
And I think also to dovetail on that, Sam, is that especially when it comes to service, especially when it comes to having that great customer service, the fastest way that you can disappoint somebody is to make assumptions about what they're going to decide, do, or spend. Because what happens is that you're protecting yourself against getting that rejection, against getting that no. So you decide, well, they're just not going to buy the expensive thing. I'm not going to show them the top of the line. I'll show them the average thing. And some people just want the best. Like some people, they're millionaires in a certain category and they're willing to spend on their house or their car or whatever the category is. And so when we make assumptions in delivering our product and service, that is the fastest way to disappoint somebody and have them go, wow, I wish they would have at least asked or at least offered or whatever. It's happened to all of us.
Oh, no doubt. I love that you said that. There was I had the privilege here a couple weeks ago to meet in person my very, very first coaching client ever back from 2019. I was up in Chicago area. And so I had a privilege of having dinner with this gentleman, a guy named Mark Portuesi. And then I trained his company the next day. And he said to me something that evening that I had completely forgot that I even told him back then from 2019. And he said it was such a game changer for him. He said, when we were training, one thing you told me is we present everything to everybody every time. And he said, present everything to everybody every time. And if we do that, we give them the opportunity to say no to things. And then when they've said no to something that satiates that need to, because so many times we, especially in home services, lots of times really big ticket items, a lot of times they just want to feel like they're winning somehow. And being able to say no to something means they're now cleared that no out, and then they get to say yes to something else. This is almost the other side of the same coin from in this go for no discussion. It's a fun concept with this. I'd love y'all to springboard on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. As salespeople, we know that our job is to ask questions, gather information, and make recommendations. Sometimes in that process, though, we end up making recommendations out of our own pocketbook, out of our own checkbook. We're not making the recommendation of, we're saying good, better, best. Well, I think better is good enough. So we aren't showing the best. We aren't talking about the best. So I'll tell you a very brief story. And this to me was a huge turning point in my sales career. I was working as a training director at Lens Crafters, and this customer came in and she bought a pair of glasses for her daughter. And a week later, she goes to the ophthalmologist for another whole thing. And the ophthalmologist says, "Let me see your daughter's glasses." And he takes the glasses and goes, "These are regular plastic. I can't believe." What?
Regular plastic lenses.
Yeah, plastic. I'm sorry, lenses. The lenses. I'm sorry. Thank you. Good ad. These are regular plastic lenses. I can't believe they sold you plastic lenses for your daughter. I mean, her eyes are her most valuable asset. And, these plastic lenses, if they get hit by something, they'll shatter. It can put her eye out. He says that I'm appalled by it. So she comes back to the store and she goes to the salesperson and says, "Do you carry something?" My ophthalmologist said it was called polycarbonate, supposed to be the shatter-proof plastic. And our salesperson said, "Yeah, we do." And she said, "I bought glasses a week ago for my daughter and no one told me about it." And the salesperson told the truth. Said, "Well, sometimes we just assume that customers aren't going to want to know about everything. And so we don't offer everything every time to everybody, Sam, as you said." And the customer said this. Oh, and she wrote a letter actually to the company, and it went to me because I was the training director. And this was the final line: "How dare you decide for me which of your products and services you think I'm entitled to know about? How dare you?"
Wow.
Man, it changed everything for me. We did our training. We had everybody recommend polycarbonate every time. It was the most expensive product we sold, and sales went up 11%. And nobody got any other training other than offer it every time. So this is a huge, huge, huge part. Sometimes we're just too smart for our own good, and we forget that people are entitled, right, to know about the top of the line.
Oh, that line is so powerful. I can guarantee, I know I've heard that numerous times in my career as well. It's like, how dare you not show me? The last thing we want is people to come back and say, "Well, our neighbors bought this model and you didn't even tell us about it." Right. Was it because our lawn wasn't mowed, or maybe we had the car in the parking lot or in the driveway that we're working on? What is it? It's prejudging this identity, all of these things that it's like, gosh, I don't, and so like these bad mental constructs that we tell ourselves, these stories that we tell ourselves, or these lies about, it's our own limiting beliefs that keep us from it. Man, it's just so important.
It's kind of sad too, because I think in many ways, especially the people that you work with, I think their intentions often are in the right place. I think sometimes they come at it with a feeling of, I don't want to pressure people. I don't want them to think I'm an aggressive salesperson. I think this would be fine for them. They don't need to know about the upper models, and they don't need to, in their head, they're saying, they don't need to spend all of this money. And again, it comes back to that deciding for people. Even when your intentions are good, it's still the wrong way to go. I remember also, because Richard and I met at Lens Crafters, and I remember a lady came in and she had, I would say, the closest prescription that you could have to having no prescription. She handed me her prescription and I looked at it, and it was literally I told her, I said, "You could probably go without glasses." That's like, I'm trying to talk her out of buying a pair of glasses. And she was kind of shocked and taken aback. And she was like, "Oh, no, the doctor gave me a prescription. I want these." Well, we had very high-end glasses. Lens Crafters is not a cheap place. And so the whole time to me, I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, well, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Well, she bought the super expensive frame. It was like a $300 and something sale. And in my head, I'm like, you don't even need them. And just, again, going back to that disservice in my head, I'm trying to talk her out of it, and yet she's all excited and wants this. So
Mhm.
even when we have good intentions, we have to make sure that we get out of the way.
True, true. There's an expression I heard. Actually, Mr. Spall is on the call today. I was at his when I was training at his location. One of his gentlemen that works for him there, he said people will pay more for what they want than what they need, and it just stuck with me from that day forward. And I love this concept so much. I'd love to take a turn. Let's talk about the story in the new book a little bit more, because there was a couple moments that I completely did not expect that turned a corner. When all of a sudden, out of the blue, once so for everybody that hasn't read the book, spoiler alert. But once we bought I feel like because I feel like I'm part of the story. It's been in my life for so long. But once we bought the golf course, all of a sudden, this person shows up out of the blue that knows all of these details about the house and about the people and all of these things, and just so coincidentally happens to design golf courses. So so that was one surprise. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit. Where did this idea come from? And I love the way the storyline just absolutely took off. To me, that was the moment that the book just became like, I couldn't put it down at that point.
Well, thank you. I will take responsibility for that. And I will also take blame for anybody who reads the book and goes, I don't understand what just happened. A little background for anybody who has not read the book Go for No. In the book Go for No, our main character, Eric Bratton, slips and falls and hits his head on a rock while playing golf at Strawberry Creek Golf Course. And the whole story is him meeting his future self and learning lessons from the self he could be if he ever dug in and really took Go for No seriously.
The super successful version of
exactly.
Him.
And that person depends on him to change, because if he doesn't change his ways, that future person won't exist. And so he wakes up in the hospital and they all tell him that you rolled out of bed and hit your head on the nightstand. And he's like, no, I was there. I know it's real. I met my future self. And so we kind of built a little supernatural
definitely.
Question into the first book. So when I got 2/3 of the way through this book, I always write the rough draft and then I give it to Andrea, and Andrea takes the big red pen and she makes big marks on many, many pages, which just tears my heart out. And, she sends it back and we go back and forth. We always talk about the story in advance. But when I got 2/3 of the way through, I said, nothing supernatural is happening. There's no twist.
I said that.
Oh, maybe it was.
Just remembering this.
Maybe it was Andrea.
I told you. And also, Sam, I just have to interrupt here.
I tried.
Yeah, I know. I have to interrupt here. As we were talking about writing the sequel, I told him, I'm like, now listen, Go for No is a great story. Like, we get so many compliments on the, emotional aspect, and people connect to the character and all this. So I'm just telling you right now, like, you better bring it for this sequel. I don't know what you need to do, but you better figure something out. So he comes up with the general plot and the general idea of this whole thing, which is Eric, now our main character, does the crazy thing and buys this golf course, which was his lifelong dream. And now he has got to figure out how to keep it, and pay for it.
Almost 3 or 4 times more than he originally intended to pay for it.
So yeah, what was this great thing is now turning into this kind of nightmare for him. And I go to him and I'm like, there's nothing supernatural. We've got to figure something out. I don't know. Like, you better come up with something. So he came up.
I almost stole it. I was that close to making this my idea.
But you did come up with.
I came up with the idea, but
the idea.
You were the one who prodded me.
Yeah, of having someone from the first book come back, and she actually turned into be kind of a cool character.
Yeah.
No, the maid from.
Oh, the maid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So she turned out to be kind of a wise character and
Yeah.
added that element.
Yeah. Oh, that was so cool. I'm waiting for the next book because I feel like it's going to take off on the one little trinket in the box, and the horse trinket in the box.
Oh,
That's
The
all I'm going to
pure
say for
horse.
everybody that hasn't read it. But I feel like there's a whole storyline around just that because it was such a mystery what was in the box. So maybe there's an idea for continuation
thank
of some
you. That's a
things.
good idea. There's no backstory on it yet, but there very well could be.
Yes.
I love it. So there was another twist that was really cool. And it's more back along the lines of learning the lessons in sales and going for the no. And it's what I talked about early on in our conversation here about there was the point where Cassie kept getting, she kept hearing no and kept hearing no and kept hearing no. And then when she went back to the golf coach, and the golf coach says, well, maybe you should just talk to some of the bigger fish. Stop with all the little fishes. And then gets into the research about it. And then, of course, goes to New York, meets the sister, ends up on the private jet tour. That whole excursion was just really, really cool in my mind. And it really reinforced that moment of, well, why not? Because a no is just a no, and it just like it says in the sign. It's yes is the destination, no is how we get there. So unpack that concept of not being scared to go to really reach out to I guess reaching up in the ladder. Not being scared to reach out to the ones that in network marketing years and years ago when I used to do that, they always called it the chicken list. You have your list of all the people you're supposed to reach out to, but then make your chicken list, that top 10 people that, are affluent, they're influencers, all those types of things. But like, where do we reach out? What's the motivation there and how do we get there?
Right. Well, I think part of the thing with that was to show people all of the different ways that you could apply go for no. And that in the broadest sense, it really is to take a good risk and to play to win instead of just playing not to lose. So many of us it's like, how do we just play not to lose? How do we just scrape by, get enough business? I just need one yes today. And as soon as I get it, so it's all that playing it safe. And that's why I thought it was such a cool idea. And part of me, I worried, and so I'm glad to hear you say this, Sam, because I worried, is this so unbelievable? Like when Richard wrote this whole thing and came to me with this idea, I'm like, is this so wild and unbelievable that she sees this opportunity? And then I thought, but yeah, this is what Go for No is all about. It's about having an awareness of what you're trying to go after, setting a goal, and then seeing an opportunity. And instead of saying, well, it's too much money, I'm never going to make it, I can't fly across the country. She could have come up with, she had 5 really easy excuses. We just said, no, this is her go for no moment. In fact, I remember really close to getting to the published date, and we were, every morning when we go on walks, we talk about our business. So we would strategize about the book every morning on our walk. And I remember getting home and saying to him, I said, you know what? We've got to have the phrase go for no moment in this book. And I don't think we do. And I rushed to my desk and I'm like, we've got to have the phrase in. This was Cassidy's big go for no moment. It was the moment where she had to decide, do I do something crazy? Because this is, or will she regret, gosh, I wonder what would have happened if I had just bought a ticket and flown to New York and tried to meet this woman. And that's what we wanted to get across with this is these moments happen and you've got a choice. You can either say yes to the go for no moment and just go for it and try and make your ask. And it could have been a disaster. She could have failed. She didn't, but spoiler alert. but I think that just is what we wanted to get across was do some crazy things.
Well, I'm gonna steal her story here. This is your story, but I'm stealing it. Yeah. When we first launched our business, we kind of launched it. I mean, just said, let's quit and start a business. I mean, we really hadn't had a deep plan, and
The
we had enough money to
entrepreneurial
go.
seizure, as Michael Gerber says, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And we had about
That's funny.
six months worth of money at that moment, and we were 5 months in, and we hadn't made any. Well, I think we sold a couple of books, but we hadn't made any significant sales. And we decided to go to the American Society for Training and Development conference up in San Francisco. And we go there, and Andrea and I split up, and she's in a mixer, right? And she sees this woman across the room, and her name badge says Deborah Maston, J.C. Penney. And she's thinking, oh my God, J.C. Penney, that's a big company. I don't know. Are we ready to try to do training for a company that big? I mean, we were kind of thinking mid-range mall, and she says to herself, well, why did we come here? Did we come here to prejudge people? Did we come here to not pass out books? So she walks over to Deborah Masson with all the courage she had. And it's funny because the way she tells the story is, she said, I had two thoughts in that moment. The first was, you've got to approach that. You got to approach Deborah. And the second thought was, you can't approach Deborah, right? And you got these two sides of your mind going like, I should do it. You can't. I can do it. And anyway, she went up. She said, hi, we have a company. This is our book. You want to take a look? And Deborah takes the book. She flips through it. And she goes, this is pretty interesting. She said, do you guys do distance learning? And Andrea says, oh, of course we do. So anyway, she runs back and finds me, and she goes, Deborah Maston wants us to call her on Monday morning. She loves the book. And she says, she wants to do distance learning. I said, what's distance learning? She said, I have no idea. She goes, but apparently we're going to have to learn by Monday. And that is the example of that moment where you have to put your own fears and your limitations and I'm not good enough. I'm not big enough. We're too new. We're too new. We were making calls in companies. We didn't have business cards yet. I mean, it's just, you just have to get out and tell your story, and, you'll screw up a lot. Okay. And, that could have gone the other way. By the way, J.C. Penney ended up being our biggest client for about 3 years and completely kept our company going.
Wow.
And so if she had not approached her that day, we wouldn't be talking to you and your guests now.
Oh my gosh. It reinforces the quote. Failure is acceptable. Not trying is unforgivable.
Yep.
It's like right from that moment. That's so powerful. So what I'm hearing in that is, so I think something that everybody struggles with is the imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I'm not quite there. We're too new. I've dealt with it. I constantly do all the time. I don't know if I should even be in this group of peers. Have I earned my place? All those types of things. I'd love for y'all to unpack that a little bit, because I think that's something that everyone deals with until they learn how to overcome it, and then they still deal with it. You just figure out better tools to handle it, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, we debated about. Well, there's a theme in the book. One of the themes, big theme actually, is this idea of don't be you. And I'll let you talk about that. But so there is kind of a fake it till you make it, but not lie. Like we're not trying to have people lie about how long you've been in business and what you can do for the customer. That would be an absolute no-no.
Right.
But there is a kind of, hey, if you don't think you can talk to a customer and ask these questions and share these things, well, don't be you. Be somebody who can.
Yeah, and that really is the turning point in the book for Cassidy, because she tries to sell. She's not successful. She goes back to her dad and she says, I can't do this. I can't sell. And Eric says the words. He goes, well, then don't be you. And I heard that originally years ago, somebody telling the story. When I heard it, I thought, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Don't be you. What does that mean? Don't be you.
You read it in Steve
Chandler's book on coaching. Yeah. And I
This is a great book, by the way.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of set that aside. But then I thought about this. I thought, here's Cassidy saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. And Eric says, well, then don't be you. And of course, she's completely taken aback by it. What do you mean? Don't be me. How do I not be me? And he said, Cassidy, you have decided that you cannot do it. You've decided you're too young, or you're not experienced enough.
Based on your current situation rather than your future potential.
Exactly. You're looking at your current situation and you've decided that you can't do it. He goes, so I'm saying don't be you. Be someone who can. And it's really funny, Sam, because when people will come to other people for advice, I got invited to give a speech to 250 people, and oh, I can't do it. I can't get up there and speak to 250 people. And what does the good friend say? Just get up there and be yourself.
Mhm.
Just get up there and, just be yourself. No, they just told you they can't do it.
Exactly.
Don't be you.
Mhm.
Don't be yourself. Get up there with the confidence and the posture and the clothing, right? And a good opening story. Get up there and be the person who can
Mhm.
seize the moment and control the moment, right? Be that person. If you want to be James Bond, well, then study James Bond.
Mhm.
How does he dress? How does he look? How does he talk? What does he drink? Whatever it is that you want to model, right? Find a model, whether it's one person or whether it's a conglomeration of attributes,
Mhm.
and start behaving like that person. That's where the imposter syndrome comes in. They're saying like, "Oh, I'm really not that person." No, you're not that person yet.
Yet.
And you don't have to see people like, I'm lying to other people. No, you are lying to yourself.
Mhm.
You are telling yourself, I have the ability to be this person, and therefore I've earned the right to act and behave and dress and talk like this person. And so I'm going to be the best person that I can be instead of being the worst person who I've been behaving like.
Mhm.
And that's the other main message we wanted to get through in the book.
Ooh, it definitely came through very, very clearly.
Good.
It's doing the level of coaching and the different things that I've done. The way that I've always articulated it, I guess, is I always tell people I'm not asking you to be somebody you're not. What I am asking you to do is be yourself times 10. Be the best version of yourself, even if it's only for a few minutes at a time, because everyone can do that. Let's visualize it. Let's talk through what that would look like. And let's try it on like a jacket for just 30 seconds and see what that feels like. And the more that we do that, it grows and extends into, okay, let's make it a minute this time. What would that person do? If you knew you could do anything for a minute, it was going to be successful, what would that person do? And so I love that theme through the book. And it definitely came through very clearly, at least when I was going through it, because it is everything. It goes back to the identity when what we started talking about. How do we believe that we can or we can't? If, if Henry Ford, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
Which is exactly this in a nutshell.
Yeah. I love
I
that.
love this so much. We've got a question in the chat. Let's see, which book by Steve Chandler? The title of that book, do you recall?
It was called 101 Ways to Be a Great Coach, something of that nature.
I
think it was 101 because I remember the chapters were all numbered.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
remember it's in my brain. I remember reading it, but I have about the same level of recollection you do. I think it was
Or
something along those lines.
101 ways to be a better. It was just a motive. Just look for 101 ways. Okay, Steve Chandler, 101, and you'll find it.
Ask your AI. I can guarantee
Yeah,
your
exactly.
ChatGPT will be able to find it for you in no time. It's fun. Isn't that wild how we're switching? Nobody says Google it anymore. Ask your AI and then it'll find it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's crazy.
We just had a conversation, Sam, where about a week ago, we said, okay, we are an AI first company. We are no longer a you and I, hey, let's get together for strategy on Monday morning and come up with 10 ways that we think we can market the book. No. Everything is chat.
We go to AI, we ask the questions, and then we say, okay, what of these do we want to implement? How do we implement them?
Yeah,
we need to have a whole conversation around this offline, because that's absolutely where my brain has been.
Yeah.
I love this so much. Well, it is, let's see, let's open up the floor one more time. Anyone who's out there, if there's something you would like to add, a question you would like to ask, any of these concepts that you'd like to chime in on, now is your chance before we start to wrap things up here in a minute. And feel free to unmute yourselves. I'm just going to keep talking a little bit to fill some space while if anybody has thoughts or ideas that you'd like to add. Andre?
Hey, thank you so much, by the way, guys. Really appreciate you being on, and that was awesome. I coach a lot of reps, and I think getting them out of their own mind is really tough. And I shared the concept even before I came across your book to the only way you're losing is by not trying. And if you're getting a no, in any sit, you're either going to win with a sale, you're going to win with grace, or you're going to win with sharpening your skill set and getting more experience. I love this lesson continues to go on, and I really like the way you guys packaged it. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Love it. Good comment. Anyone else? All right. Well, we'll land this plane. I am so grateful that you guys were on. This has been such an honor, and I definitely look forward to continuing there's a couple conversations I'd love to have with y'all offline about some ideas that I have, and especially now that the we're on the AI track, because that's where my head is around with so many things right now. But yeah, it has definitely been an honor. Last question before we let y'all go. What's the next step for Richard and Andrea? What are y'all really excited about right now? What's lighting your fire in this moment?
Gosh, we're trying to decide that. We're trying to work through that. One of the things, because there's so many tools out there, like we've been exploring, do we take our online course and translate it into 35 different languages? Do we spruce up the course and create our own avatars that we can have do all the work for us? So I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. So that's a lot of what we're working through. And then we're toying around with a Go for No KNOW book.
Yes,
Ooh,
go for
about
KNOW.
her relationship building book. So we're playing around maybe that for 2026.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Oh, it's so impactful. The everything that y'all done, I've just have devoured every single piece that you've put out, and it is truly a guiding light for the way that I do a lot of my business. So I'm definitely eternally grateful to you guys for the way that just being inspired, and then not just sitting on an idea, but actually taking the action and implementing and leap and the net will appear, just like you were saying. You had 6 months in and 5 months of almost no business, then all of a sudden it shows up when you needed it the most. And I think that is one of the things that resonates with me the most, is because I've been in that place so many times in life and in business, that the universe always provides in exactly how we need and when we need it. And I'm just grateful to you guys for taking those steps and being the true inspirations for all of us for this message, because it is insanely powerful.
Thank you, Sam. This was a great show. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Excellent. Love it so much. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being on. Everybody that is on, I will post this recording in within my Facebook group. So make sure that if you're in the Facebook group. I know Andrew's in there. Richard, I'd love for you to, if you're on Facebook very much, I'd love for you to be part of the group as well. There's lots of great conversations that happen in there, and so that you're definitely welcome to join. I'll shoot you an invite. And for everybody that's listening, let's continue this conversation. Once we get the recording posted, I'm going to make sure there's a lot of people that will be watching this recording on replay. And so we'll make sure to keep the continuation of this conversation happening, because it's a solid one. And we just as a community, we're grateful for you guys, for the books. And it's definitely changing thousands of lives every single day. So for everybody that joined, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for announcement about the book club. Let's keep this going. This is important. This is monthly now, and so I'm excited to keep this going. The book next month will be Leadership in HVAC by Chris Morin. He was just a guest on the podcast. The episode released, I believe, this last Friday. So for everybody that's on, go back and listen to that episode. That'll give you a sneak peek. And then in those show notes is the link for that book. And I'll make sure in the announcement and the event when it goes up. And he has also committed to being a guest for the book club meeting next month. which is great. So that's my intention and goal, is as many of the books that we read that I can, I'm going to have the authors on to discuss the concepts in the book, which is just one of the best ways for us to really reinforce the learning. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And until next time, everybody, make sure to go be someone worth buying from. Thank y'all. We'll see ya.
See you, Sam. Thanks.